This session is about the agile and transformation, and other side of the story, right? Other side of the coin. And speaker is Harish, and he is a transformation coach, and he has a mission of agility and leadership by choice. His passion is transforming people by enabling them with creating a big picture and discovering journey so that they align with their goals. Right. So we're going to have a wonderful session. Over to you, Harish. Thanks for session. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you, Bhupal, for the introduction. Am I audible well?
Yes.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone, and good afternoon, good morning to people joining from other parts of the world. So like Bhupal just said, right, in a mission of agility. So I remember about 10 years back when I was doing my CSM, and I was going through a transformation exercise. The kind of inspiration I got in being this new world called agile world, and I still keep that alive. And whenever I engage with people, I work with people, that energy is what I look for in having them inspire themselves and continue their journey. And that's what kind of brought me to this topic. So let me start by sharing a little bit about myself before we delve into the topic. So my name is Harish, and what I really believe is transformation is about discovering oneself. It's about understanding oneself and discovering new possibilities. And what I love to do, and my passion is really working with people in discovering and expanding what they think is possible for them. We all talk about agile as a mindset thing, right? So, and many of us deal with mindsets of the grown-ups. So at some point, I was working with all these people, and a lot of empathy for people, because many of them get stuck in their same old mindset, struggling to deal with the new realities of life. And many times they have even lost the gift of what is called as thinking and discovering what's new for them, discovering a new future for them. They have lost that ability. They're just in the motion of life into actions of agile. So I did spend some time working with children, the mindset of our future. And so I also run a preschool which is focused on learning by discovery. I strongly believe discovery is what makes people form a new life for themselves. So coming back to the topic of the day, agility and transformation. All of us here keep hearing this term called transformation, and organizations spend millions and millions of dollars on transformation initiatives. And being in a global environment, it's also about scaling across the globe, across continents and different countries. And the next thing that comes to mind is, okay, we have to standardize and have a same playbook running across the organization and everything uniform aligned. However, after all these exercises, there are some organizations who have produced exceptional results out of this journey, but a good majority of them many times are still lagging in making a significant difference in many of the problems they have been facing for ages. So with that, I would like to move on to the next slide. And I was told if you're not able to see a slide big, you could double click on the slide and that would show as a big thing on your screen. So you may do that. So if you look at the slides, there are a lot of things that you see, and it may not be a complete set, but I'm sure most of us, or all of us, would connect to a significant number of things that is shown on the slides. And this is what we kind of see, experience, deal with in a transformation journey. Any organization you take, we see something, subset or even a bigger set of this in place. So what are these? And many times, productivity strategy delivery seems to be the winner. So I call this the buzzwords of transformation. Without these buzzwords, it doesn't look like transformation is happening. Taking a closer look, right, is this really transformation? Let's look at one dimension of the organization, right? And I'm taking the most easiest one because that's something which all of us really connect with. So I'm starting with team. Many times we say, oh, we have an issue with the productivity of the team. this team is not delivering as per what they promised. They are far lagging behind in their commitments, and this process does not seem to work. Wow, we have a solution called agile. Let's go agile. And it's all agile for teams. Teams need to go agile. The next thing we see is training, coaching, supporting the team members with new culture, new value systems, practices. Of course, no agile without stickies, right? All this we see at our workplace. But, a new thing happened, definitely something good or better than the past. But definitely it is different. But has it really left a mark on people in that organization? In despite of doing all these things, the moment coaching goes away, coaches move out, or the steam goes away from the transmission bus, you see people falling back to their default ways, the default mode of operation, where they do something similar that they have been doing for ages, but in a new way of things, new environment. But have we really made an impact in the way people are being at their work, or even how they relate to their work, or how they relate to each other as a group of people working towards a common mission? In my experience, many times we fail at making that difference to people. We focus primarily on the process part of it. And if you take it one more level up to product, we see product being redefined, product redefinition, product families being redefined. Some of the managers taking the role of a product owner, or even new tools getting in place to define their product requirements. And if you have to call it in one line, probably I wouldn't be wrong in calling it, saying that MPP has given way to new tools like Jira and Rally. And still they deal with challenges of delivering value and delivering product at shorter cadences. So have we really made an impact in the product mindset of the organization, or even a mindset shift in terms of delivering value vis-a-vis making progress to the product? Now, taking it to the next higher level, the leadership. Leadership has a commitment for a new future, and that's why they get into this journey. But often the understanding of roles that the process defines goes into a weaker area. They end up redefining those roles, customizing the roles and responsibilities to suit their environment. And in that exercise, many times, the roles get filled by people who are probably good at some other skill set. I'm talking about managers taking a product owner role, or even strong command control managers taking up Scrum Master roles. But having said that, with all due respect to the people and the role they fulfill, they struggle in those new roles, new customized agile roles with conflicting roles and responsibilities. For example, if a manager is playing the role of a Scrum Master and a product owner, I've seen such examples, is always in a conflict of interest, whether I should protect the interest of the team and the sprint, or I should protect the interest of the product owner and get more done out of the team. So such kind of things happen at the leadership level. And even these times we see sprint reports or executive reports on sprint being circulated all the way up to the organization. Not much of change has happened in that area in many organizations. And thanks to the belief, Scrum Master seems to be an overhead. Scrum Master is a role which is can be lived without. So the question is, what happened to those key things we used to talk about: autonomy, purpose, mastery, self-organizing teams, and innovation? Have we let go those desired things? Now, giving that snapshot of a small snapshot of what is happening in different organizations, I'd like to take your attention to what they deal with in reality, right? After spending millions and millions of dollars of transformation, we still have organizations, the majority of organizations still dealing with age-old problems of accountability, ownership, commitment, and delivery at cadence. we still have not made a significant impact in those areas where it really matters to the organization. So why is that? Why is that after so much of energy being spent, it's 2022 or 23 years since the manifesto came out. After all these years still, and so many transformations, still we are struggling with these fundamental things of accountability and ownership and delivery at cadence. So I want to, when I started thinking about this particular issue that I was dealing with, I started seeing the transformation in 5 pieces. And there are 3 leading pieces and 2 lagging pieces. Almost, a good majority of transformation I've seen, we put all our energy, everything that we have into the middle 3 pieces, which is strategy, structure, and process. Leaderships have a high commitment for a better future for their organization. They come out with excellent strategies, excellent vision, a new bright future they have defined for themselves. Inside that, they have created new structures, new roles and responsibilities, and they have chosen the processes, usually an agile process like Scrum. And then teams get onto a ride of the process framework and the practices and the ceremonies. That's where that's an easy game. It's easy for anybody to go into the actions of the game. However, it's not that easy to make an impact on the top and bottom pieces, which are leadership and people, both people elements. That's hard because by default, by nature, as human beings, we resist change and we resist coaching. Including me, at sometimes I resist coaching. And on the other side, it also has a impact coming out of the lack of appetite organization has on investing time and energy in causing personal transformation to their people, for the team members. And why is that so? In my belief, transformation is a personal choice. It's a personal phenomenon. It's a very internal phenomenon. And you really can't make transformation happen to anybody. You can only facilitate that. Transformation is one choice, and when that happens, there's nothing that can stop them. I'm sure each of us in this, in the session today, at some point in your career when you started your agile journey, there is a CSM session or a Scrum gathering like this, or a meetup where you participated and you got, moved by some conversation. And that's what kept you all these years in this space. And that's the nature of transformation. And that's hard. But when it happens, there is no question of sustainability about transformation. But the sad part is we have left it as a lagging piece. Unless we tackle these 2 lagging pieces, forget talking about sustainability of transformation. We will transform physical things like organization structure and the processes, not the people who are the real assets. So what are the essential ingredients of sustainable transformation? So as I work through different groups of people, different products and teams, there is something that I have discovered for myself and seem to work in most of my areas. And that's what I want to share with you. And you could try out what really works for you, or even discover your ways of making an impact on people in their personal journey. So the first one, I call it the rules. And why do I call it rules? So I'm sure most of us would have heard sometime or the other the statement called agile is common sense, or agile is what works for us. In my recent past, when I was working with some of the teams, I found it very hard to keep them into the framework of the process. And one of the common belief people had is agile says this is what works for us. Do what works for you, apply common sense, and inspect and adapt. But you know what? They forget the rules of the game. Let's, for a moment, consider a game like, say, football. Imagine a game happening, a football happening in a large stadium, and there are no rules. You have just vanished the rule book of football. Can you just visualize that game? How would you really know a goal is a goal? How would you know which team wins? How do you call it a win? How do you know where is that the team should limit their play? How would you know how many people should participate, whether it is 12, 11, 10, 5, whatever it is? But without those rules, you don't know what the game is. So the rule is what the game is. No rules, no game. The game is the rule. Rule is the game. Now coming back to Scrum, the Scrum guide is a rule book. It's a guide. It's called a guide, but I personally believe and like to call it the rule book. And without those rules, there is no Scrum. You might be practicing something which is, an adaptation of Scrum. I wouldn't call it Scrum. If you have changed the rules, it cannot be called Scrum. Now, does that mean Scrum is rigid? Definitely not. The rules is what gives the real benefit of Scrum. And the inspect and adapt must happen inside those boundaries. And that's where we have the real opportunity of transformation. And no rules, no accountability, not even a chance for transformation. Forget transformation. So having said then, with the understanding that, yes, we got to uphold the rules of the game, let's look at what next, right? The next one is what I call as failure is not an option. Wow. But Agile says fail fast and fail small, learn fast. Then how would you call it as a failure is not an option? So I wanted to connect back to what really happens in team scenarios, right? The teams go and commit in a sprint because they believe that is possible for them. And in many cases, I've seen teams committing much more than what they've ever delivered in the past few months. And they believe they could still do it. Teams sometimes committing for about 200% of their average velocity. And nobody has any questions about that commitment. PO is very happy because things are moving into in progress. Beautiful word. And then the team members, they say it's possible, we could do it. And thanks to the new age thought, Scrum Masters are optional. Scrum Master is often an overhead, or even we have Scrum Masters who deal with 5 to 6 teams in parallel. And it's more of a coordinator that the Scrum Master has become. This cannot help us cause a sustainable transformation. So what do I really mean failure is not an option? I said, Agile says fail fast, learn fast. But then it also doesn't say plan for failures. It just says fail small, fail fast, learn fast. So failure is not option doesn't mean it's not okay to fail. What I really intend to communicate here is when you as a team, when you as a person go and give a commitment to your product owner, to your organization, have a high regard and relation to what you call as your commitment. And stand and operate from a place where failure is not an option. That really drives the transformation within, which is giving you a new way of being, acting, and thinking, where you find solutions to your own problems. You don't need much of an external help to solve it when you are operating from failure is not an option. Now, I want to just take a small example, right? When you are really dealing with, and I'm sure all of us have met with some kind of a real emergency or real tough situations in life, and probably have never gone through such kind of situations. Have you experienced, you have dealt with it so powerfully, you had no prior experience of how to solve a problem. But despite the limitations, constraints you had inside that, you did excellently well in coming out of that situation successfully. So that's what failure is not an option looks like. And the beauty of it, and why I love this a lot, is the real beauty of it is, you stand in a place, failure is not an option. You execute your sprint. At the end of the sprint, you may still fail. Absolutely okay, no problems. It's okay to fail. But then the real learning that comes out of that failure is the experience through which you caused a failure, the experience of a real failure, not a postmortem of the failure that you do in your retro. That is more of on the stance talk you do. When you're really playing a game not to fail, that experience is a huge experiential learning, which will make you shift leaps forward. Not when you do a postmortem at the end of the sprint in a retro. So guys, this is something which I really think is a game changer in causing transformation. No accountability, no transformation. So let's take a look at the third thing, which I call as balancing commitments. So this is again coming from teams commitment, right? Teams go and commit inside a sprint because they believe it is possible. Or sometimes it is an environment of fear that makes them say that they believe they can do it. That's something we have to deal as part of coaching, where we create an environment where team has the empowerment to say what is possible for them. And taking to a scenario where team is empowered and they are saying this, yes, we are committing to something and we think this is possible inside the sprint. Encourage, empower, coach your teams to relate to that commitment of theirs as something like life is at stake. That commitment is not a cheap word, which may or may not happen. It's not a forecast that you give. Technically, we say it's a forecast for the sprint. But if you're looking at real, deep-rooted transformation, you got to deal that with something that is very dear and respectful of myself. And it's not okay for me to fail on my commitment. And if that has to happen, leadership has a huge role to play in it. Leadership has a huge role in terms of resolving everything that comes in the way of team success, resolving every impediment, creating an awesome runway where team can really excel and succeed. If that doesn't happen, team's commitment is always a struggle. Many a times, one of the biggest things, I was just observing the chat window. What I see is many people are commenting on leadership buy-in. Yes, if leadership is not there, team's commitment really doesn't mean anything. It is just like taking a lottery. If it happens, it happens. But the moment you have the leadership commitment to resolve those things for you, you have a better chance, higher chance of the experience of agility, the experience of succeeding in agility, and experience of keeping your commitments. So what is team's role in this? Do not allow system to make you fail. You made a commitment because the system demanded of you to deliver things faster, deliver things with productivity, deliver things with high velocity, deliver value to customer at the earliest possible. And when you step up to that demand of the organization, do not allow the system to fail you. Hold your system accountable, hold your management accountable, hold your leadership accountable to give everything that is required to make that commitment happen. So the way I call it is, team's success, team's velocity is directly proportional to the leadership's activeness, involvement in clearing the impediments and creating that runway for success. So never allow your system to fail you. When team steps up to that level of relatedness to their commitment, that balance of commitment creates miracles in team environments. The fourth one, this is kind of, it can go any way we think about it, but I thought it was more important to think about this as well. Provide a platform, partner, and coach. Why did I put that? So as I experienced in my coaching journey, one thing I observed is, like I was talking about the aha moments which kept us in this agile journey, each of us, right? When I do trainings for my team members, my clients, customers, stakeholders, one thing I've observed is when they are getting introduced to the world of agile and getting introduced to a framework like Scrum, they're left with aha moments when we touch upon various aspects of 12 principles, the Scrum framework, how the process works, self-governing teams, empowerment. They are really touched, moved, and inspired with the huge possibility that this process can give them. This way of working can give them in their workplace and to their personal life. I'm sure all of us would recollect to something like that in our past. That inspiration, that aha moment is what fueled us even till today, even years after. I remember attending my CSM training 10 years back. Even today, that inspiration holds me alive with the aliveness that I have today. Now, having said that, every training happens awesome. People are inspired. They're just eager to go back and start practicing. But as I went through different teams, training and all those things, I started observing that a pattern is developing, and which could be common in other organizations as well. The pattern was all those inspiration aha moments has started dying out. And why that is happening? I started connecting with people, right? And they say, no, Harish, we tried doing it. It doesn't work here. It's not practical. It doesn't, Agile is not suitable for our environment. We are XYZ environment. We are this, we are that. And so Agile is not really, working in this environment. And sometimes they say, you know what, Agile works, but our leadership doesn't believe in it. Whatever it is, right? So at the end of the day, they end up with few common statements. Agile does not work for me. Agile does not suit our environment. Agile is not practical. The environment is not supportive. Something of that sort. So one thing as coaches, Agile evangelists that are part of this conversation today, my request to you is, teaching is good, but partnering and creating a platform for practicing is more and more and more important, because if you don't provide them the room for practice, it's not going to work. So work with your work with your customers, stakeholders, partners in negotiating and creating that platform for learning and practicing. If can they really be into a transformation exercise, then get into the learning exercise. If teams are not in a state to start a transformation exercise or start practicing what they're going to learn, I must say we are actually creating more detractors to the world of agility than we create people leaving the world of agility. So if you are training more and more people without the opportunity to practice, without the platform to experience in reality the possibility that they see, we are doing a biggest disservice to people. We are somehow killing the possibility they see for their life and their future and their work. So let the aha moments of learning fuel their personal transformation. Keep that alive. So last, the most famous one, Scrum Master. So I'm sure every environment you would see a conversation about Scrum Master, good or bad, average, it doesn't matter, but definitely we have a conversation. And I was thinking how best to put it. And I would relate it to my journey and how I found value in my journey as a Scrum Master and a coach. The first time I chose to step up as a coach is when I was demanded to be a Scrum Master by my managers. I had few successes in the organization, executing projects and causing really good breakthroughs in the following the Scrum way. So my directors wanted me to take up Scrum Master role in a couple of other projects, and I declined it. And it went all the way up to the CIO of the organization. And I met him, and he said, you know what, Harish, you have been doing good. You have good understanding of Agile, and I want you to be the Scrum Master for this. And then I said, you know what, as per the definitions we have done in our transformation journey, a Scrum Master is somebody who will have a span of control of 7, who can influence 7 people. And I want to be an engineering manager who has a span of 40 people, because I would like to impact those 40 or 50 people. That's what I want. I'm not caring about the Scrum Master role per se. I'm looking at an opportunity where I can impact a larger group. So the CIO was kind enough, or rather he had high expectations on me. He said, why not you step up and start coaching this organization? That was a 2,500 people organization. And I said yes to it with no idea of what coaching is all about. Came out. Soon I realized how pathetic a coach I was. And then it was a journey of discovering myself. So the best thing I want to say inside this is I stepped out of the CIO office and I went and met my manager and said, I have accepted this offer to step up into this coaching role. And the first comment I heard after accepting that was, Harish, and forget using Hindi as a language for people who don't understand Hindi, but the statement I got was, Harish, tu pagal hai kya? Tujhe professor banna hai kya? This is the statement. I'll never forget that. It literally means, are you mad? Are you wanting to be a professor? You have an excellent career that you're building up here. Are you compromising that? This is what I heard. But then as I started discovering this journey, I started discovering what is the real essence of a Scrum Master. And that's what I have put it as, like, a lot of text on the slide, but I thought Without this text, it would be incomplete. I started listing down all the attributes, desired behaviors, abilities that a Scrum Master must possess. And you would see on the left-hand side of the slide, like being a great mentor, coach, facilitator, ability to listen, a people person, interested in making people succeed. There are numerous, and I've just listed a lot of them. Then I started looking at what do great leaders do? What do the most inspiring and successful leaders do? And then I started listing out that. And situational leadership, humility, integrity, vision, driving by purpose, decision-making, empowerment, delegation. There is almost 100%, if not 100, at least 80% overlap in the attributes and qualities you would see in a Scrum Master versus that you can compare with that of great, inspiring, and successful leaders of great organizations. So the way I look at it is, Scrum Master is nothing less than some of the most successful leaders' abilities. Scrum Master is somebody who has developed himself or herself with those abilities which are on par match with some of those qualities which great leaders possess. Now, having said that, the real challenge today is, and the biggest irony is, organizations many times fall into this thought that Scrum Master is an overhead, Scrum Master is a coordinator. Can we have a junior person to play a coordinator role and arrange those meetings and schedule those meetings? Or can you have one Scrum Master dealing with 6 teams? And that's the way it has been. And the irony is, even today, many of those studies and many of those organizations admit the fact that the biggest challenge they face right now and going to face in the future is the deficiency or the lack of sufficient number of leadership talent in their organization. And that's where I see a great opportunity for every organization, which is to invest in Scrum Masters. And why? Because Scrum Master is a role in the Scrum Guide. By definition, it's a role as defined as Scrum Guide. But when Scrum Master is something for an individual, when it comes to an individual level, it is never a role. It's an ability that one needs to cultivate, develop, and enhance. So if you're investing in developing that ability, I'm sure you're investing in developing a leadership. It can be much more powerful than hundreds of leadership courses you do, because it is on the code, live example, experiential learning that you do in developing your leadership. And this is an opportunity organizations have today in investing in Scrum Masters and producing great leaders for their future. And the biggest jackpot or the biggest lottery or because the byproduct they get out of it is by developing and giving that opportunity for the Scrum Masters, by investing in giving that space the way it is defined, you are not only building your leadership talent in the organization, you are also getting great teams as a byproduct. If the Scrum Master has to become a Scrum Master, one of the byproducts would be an awesome team that delivers awesome products the awesome way. So that's what makes Scrum Master the most important thing as per me in terms of making a sustainable transformation. So in essence, yes, I'd like to put it this way. Rules is what make the game. So you bend the rules, forget transformation. You will get something, but not what you hear as great experiences shared by great successful people. And operate from failure is not an option. And balance the commitment with your leadership. Work with your leadership, demand accountable, hold the leadership accountable. And definitely look at it. Do you really want to train people when they don't have an opportunity to practice? It's okay to wait, but do not push them prematurely and leave with an experience that will never come back to the agile world. It costs this community a lot when you push people into training with no opportunity to perform. So I'm not saying we should not train. Create opportunities. Let these kind of gatherings, these kind of meetups that we have, create those opportunities of hands-on practice of what agility is all about. And Scrum Master, demand one. Be a huge demand for Scrum Masters in whichever environment each of us are operating, because that's going to be the foundation for creating a great leadership for agile to sustain. So in essence, I would like to put it as an analogy. Just if you look at the cyclist or the cycle race example, you could bring in the state of the art cycle, the best of the best, the lightest of the lights, carbon fiber, whatever you call it, the best of the best cycles. But at the end of the day, how good a cycle is going to be defined by how good the skill sets, how good the mindset is that of the cyclist. So a cyclist as good as a cyclist. So in other words, for organizations, the sustainability of transformation is only as sustainable as the impact we have made on each person, as an individual and as a group, because people are what makes it happen. Process just facilitates. And with that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you so much, and I'll be happy to take questions, if any. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Harish.
Thank you.
It was a great session. It's on time. I think there are some questions I have in chat box, but please feel free to have guys type in your questions, and I can ask for on behalf of you. Right. So what is say somebody's is it all fundamentals of Agile or Scrum happening really on the ground level?
Great question. And I'm happy somebody asked that question, because that is something we have been drifting away from. Right? We have, like in my experience of the last 10 years, have seen the shift happening from the fundamentals, the core values, the principles, to the actions of Agile. People need quick solutions. That's why coaching has become less and consulting has become more. They need solutions rather than discovering what agility is all about. Agility is not something that can be taught. That's my discovery. It has to be experienced inside those 12 principles. So what I do in my environment is, when I go to teach people or start working with people in the world of Agile, I ensure that they go through the 12 principles in and out, word by word, and discovering it, not by teaching them. They have to discover what each of those principles state and what do they discover for their life inside that. I start connecting the agility and the values of agility to their personal life. How does that impact them as a person? That's where the transformation begins. Then we talk about process.
Hope that answered the question, guys. Then another question was, what sustainable measure you took for the Agile sustainability?
I can share some things. There is no single formula that is applied, right? You understand. But then the first thing, the first measure, and which is a sure shot most of the time I have seen, is start with connecting agility to people's life. Because if you look at, we know Agile is common sense, Agile is a mindset, but it has a huge impact on one's personal life. And if you want to make it sustainable, start with what Agile is for people, not what is it for work. It doesn't take much of a time, much of an effort to do that. But start with connecting agility to people's life. And when they see that new possibility for their life, and then their profession, and then their project, and half the job is done. So something that I do is start connecting Agile examples to their real life and how they have experienced agility, how they have performed with agility. What was the state of mind that made them do it? Then start connecting it to what did it take for them to do that at work. One of the examples I use is typical Indian family environment in the morning, right? I can relate it to my environment because I have a son who goes to school at 7:15, and both of us go to work at around 8. So it's like, that time in a family, breakdowns happen. We don't really care about whether it's a wife that washes the vessel or the wife that cooks or the husband that cooks or the husband that gets the child ready. That's real teamwork. And you fight at the time. At times you fight because some things are not working and the school bus is waiting. And that fights disappear in no moment. That's an example of agility. If you can bring that to your workplace, wouldn't it be amazing? And this is a common example. I always connect with people, and most of the time it starts connecting to people.
True. Another question, should we consider a Scrum Master as a full-time role since we are a small organization, and like one person will play a Scrum Master for 2 projects, and half the time he will do the development.
So, you asked me the question. Who has asked the question? I've asked the question and then put a budget cap on it, right? Okay, so it's what is that you are committed to as an organization. If you're really looking at discovering a new possibility for your team and your organization and your product, I would say invest in a Scrum Master, because the value that you're going to get out of a full-time Scrum Master, it cannot be comprehended by a part-time or a shared resource. And invest in him. It's not about assigning somebody the role of a Scrum Master. You got to invest in developing that person in those abilities we're talking about. That's when the real essence comes. If there are budget constraints, yeah, organizations do sharing resources, but then somewhere the compromise happens. You got to live with that limitations. But if you ask me, go for a full-time Scrum Master. We got to bring in that culture where Scrum Master is something valuable. Personally, it has impacted me so much in the positive direction that my life is not the same after I started playing a Scrum Master role. It shifted significantly in a positive direction. The way I conduct my life has altered.
Thanks. So another question, Harish, is what is the most difficult hurdle that you faced during a transformation, and how you resolve that? How did you resolve that?
I'm going to answer that in conjunction with some of the questions that just glanced my mind, because some people are asking about how do you deal with leadership and all those things, right? So I would say the biggest challenge I face in any transformation is the first time I played a coach role. I mentioned in the session that I was a pathetic coach. And I think the biggest challenge I've faced and the biggest positive step I have taken for myself is making myself vulnerable. I'm still thankful for one of my mentors, coach, who literally took me to the CIO's office and says, "You made this guy a coach. He's pathetic. I want him to kick him out." And I was okay with that. That vulnerability is the biggest challenge I went through personally. On an emotional level, it was not easy to handle that. But the moment I went through that process of, that humiliation, I saw that it's not about you wanting to prove me wrong, about what I have to go personally in the transformation space. And then that leader was so supportive, saying that, "I got your point. We will put him on fire." And then that 2 years, life was not easy. That transformation, the life there was absolutely not easy. And that's what made me what I am today in this space. Whatever it is, that's the foundation. You got to risk yourself. I was recently talking to one of the Scrum Masters, and dealing with job safety, versus dealing with leadership and all those things. Here is what I told him, and maybe it will help some of you in the call, right? You can either compromise and survive the job of a Scrum Master, survive the role of a Scrum Master, or you can really invest in yourself and be a great Scrum Master and elevate yourself to something that you're capable of anything in future. It's an investment you do to yourself. So make the wise decision whether you want to survive or whether it's an investment to yourself and moving yourself forward. And in my experience with dealing with leadership, every leader is super committed to their cause. It's just that many times they don't know what they must do or what is the reality at the ground. When you really start, speaking with leaders and confronting things or showing them mirror, they are your partners. Just get over your fear. You will find a powerful partner on the other side.
That's good. Wonderful, actually. There is one question constantly coming: how Agile can help in application support projects?
I have no answer to that. So I would answer it this way. So, see, the pattern of questions is all about solutions. I really don't know what's a solution. For me, every thing is a discovery. Whichever specific application support you're talking about, it's not about putting a process in place. It's not about putting Scrum in place. It's not about putting some other process in place. The principles of agility, look at how can you make that happen. It says simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. You don't need a process to make it happen. In your environment, look at how do you make simplicity happen. It says business people and team must work together closely. You don't need a process to make it happen. So do not stick yourself into the process framework and then say, no, application support, maintenance, operations. How do I make agility happen there? Agility is possible anywhere. Agility is simply your alertness, your responsiveness. The process just creates a constrained environment in which you're forced to find new ways of acting and being. That's all. So don't stick yourself to the process. Believe in the principles. Discover how you make that agility happen in your environment. And if you're adopting a process, stick to the rules. Do not bend it.
Thanks. And another interesting question is, how do we convert a leader who is a non-committed towards agile, but wants the system or others to be agile?
Classic question. Yeah, the agile is all about teams, right? We are all okay. Great. I'll connect it to the previous answer I gave, right? Many times leaders, when you have those kind of leaders, they're absent to the impact of their behaviors, or they're absent to the impact of their approach towards agility, saying that it's all team issue. You have to deal with agile for the team. We are all okay. We are doing a great job. And that's where you got to move that extra step. And with full respect, empathy, it's not to make that person wrong. It's about creating that partnership and showing him the reality, showing the mirror. When that happens, you start getting that connection established. I have experiences where teams pick up work which are unscheduled or not in the sprint and start working on it. And then when I ask, where did this work come from? Oh, MD asked me to do it. And when I speak to the MD, you're pushing in too much work into the sprint. No, I don't do that. And then I said, okay, fine, we'll talk about it. And then in some time, I started showing him the reflectors. Team is pulling in this much work, and they say, MD asked me to do it. And the MD, and it's a common concept in front of the team. And MD says, you know what? That's desirable for this product. That's why I told you. I never meant it that you should do it now. You should have told me I'm impacting you. So many a times, it falls into this kind of bucket where you have not taken that building the bridge step in actually showing him how his behaviors or actions are impacting the agility part of it, and build that bridge. There's no straight equation or a formula for this. You got to risk it. You got to risk it and then cause that relation.
Yeah, thanks. All right. And there was one question, whether do we get the recording sessions? And, yes, the participants will do get the recordings of the session. Right. Another question was, there are lots of epics prioritized, and some of the teams may not get the most work, but some teams get less work. How do you, control that disparity, being a coach or?
Good. That is still a challenge. Even I don't know how I solve it, but sometimes it gets solved. Sometimes organization takes a call saying that this is how we'll operate. And primarily driven by the talent imbalance, right? The skill imbalance in teams. But then something that I would always advise is treat yourself as an engineer first who solves problems for the world. Then comes a C++, C, or Java or Python or whatever it is. So consider yourself as a problem solver and an engineer, and see if you can shift your beliefs to develop working together for a solution than, my team filling with work and the other team not filling with work. It's painful, but the journey is possible. But many times, due to that skill mismatch or imbalance in skill sets, in practice, organizations go with, right? we fill in work for the team than really going with what is required for the product and seeing how the team copes up. Obviously, many times the cost you would pay is initially you will have less of value coming out if you got to invest in team scaling up to it. If as an organization, if you're willing to do that slow down to scale up the team, maybe that becomes possible. In some scenarios, organizations are willing. In many times, organizations don't have the time and money to wait on that. So they go with the alternate approach.
Good. Another interesting question just now popped in. Okay, says that why don't dev managers give importance to Scrum boards, velocity commitments, and etc.
Good. I'm not sure the context of that question. I could read it in two ways. One is, okay, you want them to look at it with importance, or they don't care about it. I'm not reading where the question is coming, but you got to understand one thing, right? One of the most painful transformation that happens to people is in a transformation is dev manager or the manager, right? Because look at it from his shoes. Have some empathy for those managers. The Scrum Guide says product owner, team, and Scrum Master. Where is the manager in this? So the biggest personal turmoil they go through is, where do I belong? Where do I fit in, right? That's a struggle they are going to. They don't show it, but trust me, even the powerful of the managers, most successful of the managers, they go through the turmoil. Where do I find my space after this journey has taken off? So be sensitive to that part, have that respect for that human being, that individual. And then it's about seeking that help from him. Consider him as a very powerful resource available for you to seek help from, because he or she has a lot of ability in terms of, it could be technical, right? Or it could be even influence in the organization. Partner in areas where you can use that person. Because his biggest challenge is he or she doesn't know how to get engaged into this whole journey, because I don't find my role in the system. The process doesn't define me. Of course, organizations now have roles called engineering manager even in Scrum scenarios. But then you got to understand that you're dealing with a person who might be most of the times going to this kind of a status. What should I do in this environment? Where do I find my role? Where do I find my space? So it's more on the team side to build that rapport with him. Have that empathy for your managers.
Okay, thanks. Maybe another question. We are reaching towards another 5 minutes. So one question was, what is Scrum Master going to deliver apart from organizing the Scrum events? What else he can do?
Okay, this is a question every organization is dealing with. That's why it is not a valuable role, right? The biggest delivery that a Scrum Master would deliver, as I see it, is a great team. And it's many times non-measurable, right? It's only measurable in terms of how team is producing results consistent with what the process say it would produce, like delivering value at cadence, right? Delivering value, delivering customer satisfaction, and empower team. They're developing themselves as an empower team. Empowerment cannot be given; it has to be cultivated. A great Scrum Master would nurture his team such that he builds that trust factor among the team members and their surroundings, such that they create a space of environment. He works with his leadership to create a space of empowerment and trust. So, in simple terms, you would say a great team is an output of a Scrum Master. But how would you measure the success of it? It's more of experiential in terms of how the team performs as a group, as a cohesion of a powerful force. But in terms of tangible benefits, you would see results coming periodically every other sprint in terms of results, how they actively contribute to product definition. In many areas, what the process talks about. But in terms of Scrum Master, It is little intangible, tangible, not intangible. It's a team that's the outcome of a Scrum Master, in the way I see it. The coach produces a great team, right? A sports coach produces a great team. And the results are the victories they cause, the goals they score.
True. As you're empathetically saying, Scrum Master is the one basically who envisions and works between product owners and Scrum team. He will also have a lot of empowerment.
I used to tell sometimes to myself, to satisfy myself in taking up this journey 10 years back, and over a period of time, I discovered that it's true, and I started believing it. Scrum Master's job is that of like a god, right? You create, not a god, actually, it's like a sculptor who creates those murtis, right? You create those wonderful pieces of murtis from those stones, and then it gets converted to what we call as god and temples, and you lose your ownership over it. You're not part of it anymore. You have left it for others. And that's the journey of a Scrum Master. You got to get settled the fact that you're producing results at some point which you don't have ownership over. So that's how I kind of started my journey.
Yeah, we are 2 minutes away. So one last question, and this is more of a, the process. So when, organization moves, agile transformation, on what basis they have to choose these scaling models? So I know it's pretty huge and generic. I'm not sure how.
And it could get controversial also, right?
Exactly.
I would say people are given the time, considering, every process has its benefits. Every framework brings in some solution to every organization. But personally, I believe if you are not settled with mastering the foundations and the fundamentals, you go to any scaling model, you're just going to somewhere fall back into the traditional ways of operating, because you have not discovered for yourself what agility is at the root. If you take, say, one of the popular models, the foundation is that of Scrum or Kanban or whatever it is. And then you have frameworks coming on top of it. If you have not mastered the basics, the scaling will fall down in no matter of time. No, you cannot call it, you can call it some framework being implemented. It may not be agility in action, right? And personally, I believe to a large extent, Scrum can solve the problems of scaling. It's just that people have to be willing to synchronize with each other in terms of alignment of their backlog and prioritization. If we can hit that magic, Scrum can solve many of the problems.
All right. I think I think we are kind of on time. Thanks so much for your time, and it was very grateful session, insightful session, very real-time examples you have given. Thanks, and have a rest of the day. Good day, guys.
Thank you so much, each and everyone, and thanks for your time and listening. I miss seeing all of you face to face and interacting. But I think we had a great time together. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any additional questions? Feel free to put it in chat, and then we'll see. Definitely come back. Thanks. Cheers, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye-bye.